Welcome to this deep dive into the mind of Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
We're going to be using the excerpts you've shared from his Wikipedia article and really going beyond the surface level here and try and unpack how someone seemingly ordinary could commit such horrific acts.
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the dissonance between Bundy's outward persona and then the dark reality of his crimes is just, it continues to fascinate and trouble us.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you've probably heard about his charm, how he was seen as kind and empathetic by people like Anne Rule, who worked with him at a suicide hotline.
Right.
It's almost unfathomable to kind of reconcile that image with the brutal murders he committed.
Yeah, Bundy was very good at that.
Yeah.
He was a master manipulator.
Yeah.
He cultivated this facade of normalcy,
Right.
which in a sense was one of his most powerful tools.
Right.
It allowed him to gain the trust of his victims and blend seamlessly into society.
So were there any early indicators, anything in Bundy's childhood that might have foreshadowed this later darkness?
It's not that straightforward.
Okay.
Some accounts suggest a relatively typical upbringing.
Okay.
But then there are these troubling anecdotes, like his aunt finding him as a toddler surrounded by knives.
Right. Yeah.
While disturbing, we must be cautious about, drawing a direct line from isolated incidents in childhood to adult behavior.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Still, that image is unsettling.
for sure.
And what about other factors, like his relationship with his mother and the discovery of his true parentage?
Yeah.
Could those have been turning points?
It's possible.
Yeah.
Troubled family dynamics and feelings of rejection
Yeah.
can certainly have a profound impact on,
Yeah.
a developing psyche.
Right.
But it's important to avoid what we call deterministic thinking.
Okay.
Childhood experiences may shape us, but they don't dictate our destiny.
So we're looking for patterns, not definitive answers.
Right.
And speaking of patterns, Bundy's crimes, chilling as they were, they did reveal a distinct modus operandi, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He often feigned injury,
Okay.
using crutches or a sling to appear vulnerable
Uh-huh.
and evoke sympathy from potential victims.
Right.
He preyed on their willingness to help, asking for assistance,
Right.
carrying something to his car.
Which, a carefully chosen Volkswagen Beetle.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
A detail that speaks to the premeditation involved.
Right.
It wasn't random, it was calculated.
Uh-huh.
He used that car to transport his victims once they were isolated.
Right.
And then the violence escalated.
And the methods he used.
Yes.
Blunt force and strangulation were deliberate choices.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They minimized noise and often left less forensic evidence,
Right.
showing a level of organization and forethought.
Right.
That's a hallmark of many serial killers.
Yeah, this is where it gets even more complex, because Bundy's need for control didn't end with the murder itself. He engaged in acts of necrophilia, revisiting the bodies of his victims, sometimes driving long distances to do so.
Yeah, necrophilia, which involves sexual attraction to corpses, is a deeply disturbing aspect of Bundy's crimes.
Right.
It wasn't just about taking a life. It was about exerting absolute power and possession over his victims.
Right, even after death.
Even after death, yes.
This compulsion to possess went further.
Yeah.
Bundy confessed to decapitating some victims, keeping their severed heads as trophies.
Right.
It's a level of depravity that's hard to fathom.
And what's particularly striking is how his MO evolved over time.
Right.
The methods became more refined,
Right.
the control more pronounced, suggesting a chilling progression in his psychological state.
Right, it wasn't static. No,
Right.
he was learning, adapting, becoming more adept at his horrific craft.
Exactly.
And yet, even with the undeniable evidence, Bundy attempted to deflect blame,
Right.
pointing fingers at pornography, violent media, even suggesting his victims' vulnerability somehow played a role.
This blame shifting is where we start to see potential indicators
Okay.
of antisocial personality disorder.
ASPD. Yes, ASTD. So, beyond the horrific details of his crimes, we're also trying to understand the mind of the criminal,
Right.
what might have driven him to commit such acts.
It's crucial to remember that diagnosing someone posthumously is inherently complex,
Right.
and we can only speculate
Of course.
based on available information. But in Bundy's case,
Yeah.
certain traits associated with ASPD, like a lack of empathy and remorse,
Right.
seem evident in his actions and statements.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's important to delve deeper into ASPD
Yeah.
and how it might have manifested in Bundy's behavior.
Okay.
Individuals with this disorder often display, superficial charm,
Right.
a grandiose sense of self-worth,
Uh,
and a cunning ability to deceive and manipulate others.
Traits that certainly align with Bundy's persona.
Right.
He used his charm to disarm people,
Yes.
gain their trust, and ultimately to lure them into vulnerable situations.
Precisely. And beneath that charming exterior lies a profound lack of empathy,
Yeah.
an inability to genuinely connect with the feelings and suffering of others.
It's almost like a disconnect between the act and the emotional consequence,
Yeah.
as if, for Bundy, the act of killing wasn't accompanied by the same feelings of horror and remorse that most of us would experience.
That's a key point.
Yeah.
Now, it's crucial to remember that ASPD is a complex disorder,
Okay.
and not everyone diagnosed with it becomes a serial killer.
Right.
It's a spectrum.
Okay.
And Bundy's case represents kind of an extreme end of that spectrum.
I'm talking about a confluence of factors, right?
Exactly.
ASPD, coupled with other potential personality disorders like narcissism,
Possibly.
all interacting within the context of Bundy's individual experiences and choices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that complexity makes it all the more challenging to pinpoint a single cause or explanation for his actions.
Right.
Which leads us to another unsettling aspect of this case.
Okay.
The unknown. Even after his numerous confessions, the true number of Bundy's victims remains a mystery.
You mean the victims he alluded to?
Yes.
But never specifically identified. The ones he claimed were buried in locations only he knew.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It adds a layer of chilling ambiguity
For sure.
to an already horrific story.
Right.
We may never know the full extent of his crimes,
Right.
which leaves us with this haunting sense of incompleteness and unanswered questions.
It's almost as if his shadow extends beyond the known facts,
Right.
leaving this lingering sense of dread.
And that speaks to the broader challenges of profiling serial killers.
Yeah.
Their motivations are often complex and multifaceted. Their methods can evolve over time.
Right?
And they often go to great lengths to conceal their crimes.
Which brings us to another crucial question.
Yes.
How did Bundy manage to maintain this facade for so long? He evaded capture for years,
Right.
all while living a seemingly normal life.
That's one of those perplexing aspects of this case, I think. It underscores the power of deception and the limitations of relying solely on outward appearances to judge someone's character.
Right.
Bundy was a chameleon,
Yeah.
adapting his persona to fit different situations and exploit people's trust.
He was a law student,
Mm-hmm.
worked at a suicide hotline, even volunteered for a political campaign.
Right.
It's a stark reminder that evil can lurk beneath the veneer of respectability.
And that's a deeply unsettling thought, isn't it?
It is.
It forces us to confront the possibility that anyone, even someone we might consider a friend or colleague, could harbor these dark secrets.
It's certainly a blow to our sense of security
Right.
and our ability to judge character.
Yeah.
But perhaps within that discomfort, there's a valuable lesson to be learned.
I believe there is.
Yeah.
Bundy's case serves as a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving,
Right.
that evil can masquerade as normalcy, and that we must remain vigilant, trusting our instincts, while also acknowledging the limitations of our own perceptions.
So in a sense, Bundy's ability to deceive, to blend in so effectively, becomes a cautionary tale, urging us to be more discerning, to look beyond the surface,
Yeah.
and to be aware of the potential for manipulation that exists in the world.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's a call for a more nuanced understanding of human behavior,
Okay.
a recognition that good and evil aren't always clearly delineated,
Right.
and that even in the darkest corners of the human psyche, there are complexities and contradictions that defy easy categorization.
Bundy's case also raises profound ethical dilemmas about studying serial killers.
Yes.
On the one hand, there's a scientific imperative to understand the motivations and behaviors of these individuals
Right.
in hopes of preventing future tragedies.
Of course. Yeah.
And yet, there's the risk of inadvertently glorifying their crimes or providing them with a platform for their twisted ideologies.
That's the challenge, isn't it?
It is.
We must approach these cases with a clear sense of purpose,
Right.
prioritizing the pursuit of knowledge and understanding, while remaining acutely aware of the ethical pitfalls.
Yeah.
We must avoid sensationalism
Right.
and focus instead on the deeper questions, the ones that might lead us toward more effective prevention strategies
Right.
and a deeper understanding of the human capacity for both good and evil.
Bundy himself offered explanations for his actions.
Yes.
Blaming pornography, violent media, even the perceived vulnerability of his victims.
Right.
But how do we separate genuine insight from manipulation?
That's the crux of the matter.
Yeah.
Bundy was a master manipulator. Even in his confessions and interviews, he
Right.
played with language, offering glimpses of vulnerability
Right.
while simultaneously deflecting responsibility.
So even as we analyze his words, his justifications, we must do so with a critical eye,
Right.
recognizing that every utterance might contain an element of performance,
Possibly.
a calculated attempt to shape our perception of him.
That's why it's crucial to ground our analysis in factual evidence,
Right.
in behavioral patterns, in the insights gleaned from forensic psychology and criminal profiling.
Uh-huh.
We must look beyond the surface, beyond the carefully constructed facade,
Yeah.
to the underlying motivations and patterns that drive such horrific acts.
And perhaps through that process, through that relentless pursuit of understanding,
Yeah.
we can move closer to answering the question that continues to haunt us.
Right.
How could someone like Ted Bundy,
Right.
someone seemingly ordinary, commit such unspeakable acts of violence?
The question that keeps us up at night.
It feels like we're almost circling a paradox here.
Right.
You know, we seek understanding to prevent future tragedies, but how can we truly understand a mind as complex and contradictory as Bundy's?
Yeah.
He blamed external factors like pornography.
Right.
But was that genuine or just another layer of manipulation?
That's the question that's puzzled experts for decades.
Yeah.
Bundy's claims about pornography's influence, they kind of intersect with the specific cultural moment,
Right.
the 1970s,
Right.
when anxieties about pornography's impact were particularly high.
So was he tapping into those societal fears?
Well,
Perhaps sensing an opportunity to shift blame
it's possible.
and garner a degree of sympathy?
It's certainly possible.
Mhm.
He even gave an interview to psychologist James Gobson,
Right.
who was a prominent anti-pornography advocate at the time,
Right.
further fueling that narrative.
Right.
Whether Bundy genuinely believed it or was simply exploiting a cultural vulnerability remains open to debate.
Yeah, it speaks to his cunning, his awareness of how to manipulate public perception.
Right.
But even beyond the pornography debate,
Mm-hmm.
Bundy seemed to struggle with reconciling his own actions,
Yeah.
with his sense of self. He claimed he needed to be extremely drunk to commit his crimes,
Right.
almost as if trying to create a separation
Interesting.
between his true self and the monster who committed those acts.
That's a fascinating psychological thread to pull on,
Yeah,
Was it an attempt to compartmentalize?
right,
To distance himself from the horrific nature of his crimes?
right.
Or was it, as you suggested, just another manipulation tactic?
It's almost like he was trying to construct a narrative where he wasn't fully in control,
Right.
as if some other force or entity was driving him.
Which raises the question of whether there's any validity to that claim.
Right,
Could there have been a dissociative element to his psyche,
right,
a genuine struggle with multiple personalities?
right.
It's impossible to know for sure, especially given the limitations of posthumous diagnosis.
It seems like every answer leads to more questions.
It does, doesn't it?
And perhaps that's the most enduring takeaway from this deep dive.
Possibly.
That even with all the analysis, all the attempts to categorize and explain,
Yeah,
Ted Bundy remains an enigma.
he does.
A disturbing reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary individuals.
We've explored the chilling details of his crimes.
Yeah, right.
The potential role of ASPD and other psychological factors, the unsettling effectiveness of his manipulations.
Right.
But perhaps the most crucial lesson lies in acknowledging the limits of our understanding.
So what does this all mean for us, the non-serial killer folks? Aside from the obvious precautions,
Sure.
what can we glean from this deep dive that might be relevant to our own lives?
I think the key takeaway is the importance of informed vigilance.
Okay.
We cannot live in fear,
Right,
but we can be aware of the subtle signs of manipulation,
right.
the red flags that might signal danger.
Yeah.
Bundy's case teaches us to trust our instincts,
Uh-huh.
to question appearances,
Right.
and to never underestimate the human capacity for deception.
It's a sobering thought, but also an empowering one.
Yes.
By understanding the tactics used by someone like Bundy,
Mm-hmm.
we can better protect ourselves and those we care about.
Right.
We can foster a culture of awareness and critical thinking, one that doesn't shy away from confronting the darker aspects of human nature.
We've covered a lot of ground today, and I hope this deep dive has provided you with, a deeper understanding of this complex and disturbing case.
Yeah.
But the conversation doesn't end here.
Right.
I encourage you to continue exploring the resources you shared,
Uh-huh.
to delve into the ethical questions surrounding the study of serial killers,
Right.
and to reflect on the implications of what we've discussed for your own life
Right.
and your understanding of the world around you.
We may never fully comprehend the motivations of someone like Ted Bundy,
Right.
but by engaging with these difficult questions, by
Yeah.
seeking knowledge and understanding, we
Yeah.
can perhaps hope to build a safer and more informed world,
Right.
one where the shadows of such darkness are less likely to take hold.
For sure.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.